What's going on, everybody? Back at it with another New York Giants video. And in this video, I'm going to talk about what a lot of fans wait for every year, the Giants' 53-man roster. Now, before I get into my projection, I want to preview what's to come here in this episode. And I'm going to briefly recap the Giants' preseason game against the Jets, talk about the 7 players the team cut already, so they're down to 73, and then I'll get into who I think is ultimately going to wind up making the initial 53-man. But first, make sure to follow us on our Twitter and Instagram handles at Big Blue Avenue. Appreciate all the support that we've gotten. Also, make sure to check us out on our YouTube channel if you haven't already at Big Blue Avenue. And this episode is presented by BetUS. You can sign up with our promo code at JOIN125. Get a 125% sign-up bonus for all your live sports betting. That's BetUS, where the game begins. And now, I'm really excited to talk about this because this is what a lot of Giants fans live for every single year. With the preseason games taking place, you're kind of wondering who's going to be on this football team, who could potentially be a future star, right? And it excites a lot of Giants fans and just football fans around the entire NFL, including myself. And the Giants had a pretty good preseason. They were 2-1. They did wind up losing to the Jets on Sunday, but they did beat the Patriots and the Bengals. Davis Webb on Sunday looked good, had to play most of the game due to a Tyrod Taylor injury. He threw an interception and then left the game with a back injury, but reports say he seems to be okay. Webb threw 38 passes, completed 30 for just over 200 yards and a touchdown. And I was impressed with undrafted rookie free agent Jashawn Corbin in particular, the running back who had 6 rushes for 23 yards, but more importantly, the 1 touchdown and the 5 catches. I really like that versatility from a young player. And another undrafted rookie who's trying to fight for a roster spot is 6'9" Austin Allen. Led the Giants with 4 catches, 40 yards, and 1 score. He wants that tight end 3 job. I'll tell you, he is going to make it very difficult for this Giants front office to let him go. But even if they do, he'll most likely wind up back on the practice squad. Other rookie tight end, Daniel Bellinger, who the Giants drafted in the 4th round, did leave the game with a concussion following 3 receptions for 37 yards and a 25-yard catch. And the highlight player of the preseason, not just for the Giants, but for the entire NFL, has been Alex Bachman. Wound up leading the NFL with receptions in the preseason. Bachman had 6 catches, 427 yards on Sunday. Richie James had 3 receptions. Nate Metters had 12 stops. And the player of the game was obviously Austin Calitro, the linebacker who grew up a Giants fan. 5 tackles, 1 in the backfield, had a fumble recovery and a pick-6 interception returned for a touchdown. And I really liked what I saw from Austin Calitro, and he is making a strong case for a roster spot. Gary Brightwell returned kicks in this game, so special teams could be interesting. But before I get into my official 53-man projection, I want to go over the players the Giants already released, the 7 that were waived on Monday while this recording is taking place. Offensive lineman Josh Rivas, who was an undrafted free agent out of Kansas State. Yusuf Corker, defensive back, also an undrafted rookie. Ryan Santoso, who was on a 2nd stint with the team. He just was brought in to kick Sunday for Graham Gano, who was dealing with a concussion of his own. Wide receiver Keelan Doss. Wide receiver Travis Toivonen. Defensive back Elijah Griffin. And offensive tackle Eric Smith. I do feel like these 7 were obvious cuts. No surprises here. A lot of these players on the bottom of the totem pole. And now the Giants sit at 73 players. So what's next? Well, here it is. The official 53-man roster projection. And, I'm proud to have said I put a lot of time and thought into this. And, none of these 53-man roster projections are going to be 100% accurate. It's nearly impossible. And the Giants are going to be hawking the waiver wire. There's rumors that Tony Jefferson might get cut from the Baltimore Ravens. I mean, the Giants are probably looking for corner/safety help. They're looking for tight end help, offensive line help. They desperately need a swing tackle, backup center, you name it. So this is my initial 53-man roster. I don't necessarily think these are the 53 best players to make the team. I mean, I think most of them are, but there might be one or two in there that, might come off as a surprise as far as players getting cut. We'll talk about Darius Slayton and O'Shane Ximenez in particular. So here it is. So at the quarterback position, the Giants historically have carried 2. I'm carrying 3. I think Davis Webb earned himself a roster spot due to his performance in the preseason and his ties to the coaching staff with Brian Daboll, Shea Tierney, and, of course, general manager Joe Schoen. I have Daniel Jones and Tyrod Taylor, and it wasn't just Webb's performance, but Tyrod Taylor, the fact that he's injury-prone, and so is Daniel Jones. So those 2 quarterbacks in front of him have not proven to be healthy historically throughout the course of their career. So Daniel Jones is the clear QB1. Tyrod is still the backup quarterback. I don't think Webb is knocking on the door for that QB2 spot at all, but I think he's in as number 3. I think the Giants will wind up carrying 3 quarterbacks. So the running back position, I have 4, and here's why. I originally had 3 up until just a few hours ago, but I mean, the obvious one is Saquon Barkley. And now a lot of people are wondering, well, what should the Giants do with Matt Breida, who's been hurt all preseason? If this was Joe Judge and Dave Gettleman, I would say Breida is gone. But the fact that he has a relationship with the Bills already and was on the Bills roster last year, Brian Daboll and Joe Schoen, again, I think that connection is going to garner Matt Breida a roster spot. He also had some success with the 49ers early on in his career. Next up, I have Antonio Williams. He got rocked in that Jets game on Sunday. He took one tough hit. He coughed up a football this preseason, but I do like his ability to run between the tackles and make receptions out of the backfield. He's a nice check down option for the Giants. And again, when you have a running back like him who already knows the scheme and knows the system, you definitely want to keep him around. There are some arguments for him to fall on the practice squad, but that's where I have Jashawn Corbin ultimately ending up. And I'll be honest, I don't know if Brightwell makes the team, but from what I've been hearing by several beat reporters, including Dan Duggan, is that special teams players are highly valued, and I think Gary Brightwell will make the roster as a special teamer. I think it's important to note that Antonio Williams and Matt Breida are not special teamers. Gary Brightwell is, and that's where I think he has a leg up on Jashawn Corbin. Plus, he's been around for a year, so I think it'll make sense for the Giants to keep 4 running backs at this time, but Barkley is the obvious workhorse. Coming up next, we have the wide receiver spot. Oh, and by the way, I also have Sandro Platzgummer making the practice squad. I think him and Corbin are both going to wind up on there. Wide receivers. A lot of people are arguing 7. I only have 6. I don't think it makes sense to keep 7 at this time, but here it is. Kenny Golladay, Sterling Shepard, and Kadarius Toney are the obvious 3. Wan'Dale Robinson at 4. As you can see, I don't have Darius Slayton on this list. I'll give my opinion on what I think might happen to him after I wound this up. With David Sills, who has impressed, his chemistry is elite with Daniel Jones. He'll be the number 5, and Richie James will return kicks and punts most likely, penciled in as the number 6 wide receiver. I don't have Alex Bachman on here, and I don't have Darius Slayton on here. Bachman has been an awesome preseason story, but I ultimately think he winds up on the practice squad. Bachman, he's a great route runner. He's been on the Giants since 2019, but he's too much like Richie James, and he's a slot guy, right? You need receivers that are going to go over the top. And that's why people are arguing for Darius Slayton. And I get those arguments, but you look at the players the Giants have invested money in. Kenny Golladay, Sterling Shepard, Kadarius Toney, first-round pick a year ago, and Wan'Dale Robinson this year, a second-round pick. The writing's on the wall for Darius Slayton. It's not the player that's the problem. Now, yes, he has drop issues, and I understand that. He's on a contract year. I think what's going to wind up happening is the Giants are going to trade him. I do think there's trade interest, and I think he will wind up being traded. But if the Giants part ways with him, you clear up a decent amount of money. Now, I'm not saying they're going to wind up saving all $2.5 million, because that's not the case. They're going to allocate that money elsewhere when waiver claims come along, or that money will be allocated towards David Sills or Richie James for less money. Your number 5 wide receiver should not be making $2.5 million a year. If you look across the NFL and at wide receiver 5s, how many do you know that are making $2.5 million a year? Not one, right? So ultimately, at the end of the day, Darius Slayton should not be on the New York Football Giants in 2022. It sucks to see him go, but with this regime, it's not really working out, and there are a lot of context clues heading towards his exit. I do think Alex Bachman and Jalen Moore do wind up on the practice squad. I also don't have CJ Board here. Again, I could see the Giants keeping 7 receivers, but the problem with that is the Giants are so injury plagued. I had to make that a consideration when making this roster. Unfortunately, I do think that there are some players who maybe shouldn't make it that will make it due to the fact that the Giants are, hitting the injury bug already. So, tight end is up next. Now, I have 3. I don't love this trio, but here it is. Daniel Bellinger, Chris Myrick, and Tanner Hudson, who the Giants just signed earlier this past week. Daniel Bellinger is the clear tight end 1, rookie out of San Diego State. Chris Myrick spent some time with the Giants last year. I think he'll be tight end 2. He's a good blocker in the run game as well. And then Tanner Hudson at number 3, a guy who has experience with the 49ers and the Buccaneers. Now, there's an argument for Austin Allen, right? 6'9", really good preseason, had that 1 touchdown. I think he's more likely to hit the practice squad than a guy like Tanner Hudson. Ultimately, I do think the Giants upgrade at the tight end position. I do think they claim somebody off of waivers. I don't think Tanner Hudson will be on the team long term, although I think he might make the initial 53-man roster. If Bellinger was not dealing with a concussion, I think there'd be a chance that Hudson doesn't make it at all. They carry just 2 tight ends and then try to claim somebody off of waivers in hopes that Austin Allen does make the practice squad. As crazy as that might sound, look what happened last year with Casey Kreider, right? There was an issue with the books, and the Giants were able to re-sign Casey Kreider following the 53-man roster cutdown. But it'll be interesting to see what happens at the tight end position. Again, Jordan Akins cut, Ricky Seals-Jones and Andre Miller both out for the season. Not a good start for this new revamped Giants tight end room. So moving on to the offensive line, I have 9 men here for the offensive line. It's the 5 obvious ones, and now there are rumors that Shane Lemieux could possibly be headed to IR. He's likely to miss week 1 with a toe issue. I'm not sure how long he's going to be out injured, but hopefully it's not too long because the Giants need continuity next to Andrew Thomas. I would prefer not to see Josh Azudu starting week 1 at left guard against Tennessee, going up against Jeffrey Simmons. I don't like that at all. Andrew Thomas, Shane Lemieux, John Feliciano, Mark Lewinsky, and Evan Neal are the 5 starters when everyone's healthy. Now I have 4 backups, and now 2 of these backups, I'm not so sure if they're going to stick. But Josh Azudu, the 3rd-round pick, he'll obviously stick. I like what Devery Hamilton has brought to the table in preseason. He's taken advantage of every opportunity that he's gotten. He could play tackle. He could play some guard. He got some reps with the first team due to the injury to Shane Lemieux. The fact that the Giants are viewing him as a valuable player makes me think he's in line to make the 53-man roster. Also, he's not a rookie. He's been around the league for a year now. Jamil Douglas is a player that the Giants brought in from the Buffalo Bills. He's also a former Titan. He did not make the Bills' initial 53-man roster last year, but I have him making it over Max Garcia due to the versatility. I think Jamil Douglas is more suited to fill in at center. God forbid something happens to Feliciano than Max Garcia is. Same thing goes for Ben Bredesen, not to mention that Douglas and Feliciano were teammates last season. Ben Bredesen is a guy the Giants traded for last year around this time during cutdown time, and I think Bredesen was very impressive in the offseason and training camp and in the 1 preseason game that he played in, but he's been dealing with an injury as well. Ultimately, I do think the Giants try to upgrade this position unit. They might take Bredesen or Douglas off the roster, maybe even Hamilton. I think the only backup that's a real lock right now is Josh Azudu, ultimately. But these are the 9 I'm going to go with for the initial 53-man roster. I thought about Will Holden, didn't like it. Roy Mbedeka, obviously the international pathway player. He's not going to qualify yet to hit waivers. He's going to head straight to the practice squad. Garrett McGinn, I think, will wind up on the practice squad, and I think Will Holden will wind up being released. Defense. Now, this is where it gets interesting. I spent about 2 hours going back and forth on several names, but here it is. I have 5 defensive linemen for the Giants, and you could see one unfamiliar name in there in Ryder Anderson, undrafted rookie out of Indiana. I like him a lot. He's brought a lot to the plate in the preseason. The 2 obvious ones, Leonard Williams, Dexter Lawrence. I think DJ Davidson makes the roster as well. Almost all rookies have made the initial 53-man roster under Joe Shane while he was in Buffalo as the assistant GM to Brandon Beane. And then Jelly Ellis, who, played under Wink Martindale for some time with the Baltimore Ravens. I like Ryder Anderson a lot. I think he takes a spot away from a guy like a Jalen Holmes or a Nick Williams. I also think the Giants are trying to go younger in this position group. I don't think Nick Williams or Jalen Holmes will return to the practice squad, but I do think David Moa might. Jalen Holmes left the game with an injury too. He was dealing with an issue that he's getting treated for. So maybe he heads to IR. I'm not so sure what happens there, but I have 5 interior defensive linemen. At the edge position, this is where it gets interesting. I have 6. I wanted to put 5, but with the uncertainty surrounding Kayvon Thibodeau and Azeez Ojulari with the knee, I had to put Quincy Roche on there as insurance. When I first looked ahead into what the Giants roster might look like in 2022, it did not include O'Shane Ximines, but yet here he is. I think he's become a likable guy in this wing scheme. I think it fits him better than the previous scheme under Patrick Graham. Jihad Ward is a player who came over from Baltimore as well. I know Ward played with the Jaguars last year, but he's played under Wink before. Ellerson Smith, a promising young talent, second-year guy out of Northern Iowa, I think will be a valuable situational pass rusher this year. And Quincy Roche had 2.5 sacks last year. I know he doesn't provide much special teams-wise, but I threw him on there. He's a depth piece. You can use him in multiple packages. And with the injury concerns to Thibodeau and Ojulari, we don't know what the edge room is going to look like. I think the more options, the better for the Giants at the edge rusher position. And Wink Martindale, I ultimately do think, winds up with 6 initial edge rushers on this roster. Tomon Fox likely headed to the practice squad. Interior linebackers, this is about to make a lot of people unhappy, and I understand why. I do have 5 inside linebackers making the roster. Again, I wanted to put 6, but the reason why I did not put 6 is because of the injury issues to Kayvon Thibodeau and Azeez Ojulari. Ultimately, I would have replaced Quincy Roche with this player. So I have Blake Martinez, Tay Crowder, Micah McFadden, Cam Brown, and Carter Coughlin. Now, I know Austin Calitro is not there. You have to let me explain this one. As good as Austin Calitro was in the preseason, Carter Coughlin was around all summer. Cam Brown is a core special teamer. And if you look at Dan Duggan's tweets, and he's one of the more reliable Giants insiders online, I'm not saying get all of your news from just him, but I'm saying he is reliable. I do think Cam Brown and Carter Coughlin provide versatility. Carter Coughlin is also a decent pass coverage linebacker from what we've seen. He can rush the passer. I think he's more of a threat to opposing offenses in a blitzkrieg type of scheme than Austin Calitro is. And the fact that he had more time in the offseason to play under this scheme. But I do think Austin Calitro does have a shot to make this 53-man roster. I will not be shocked if he makes it at all. Tay Crowder and Micah McFadden are interchangeable. Unfortunately, the Giants did lose Darian Beavers, which would have made this conversation even tougher. or it might have making it easier because we might not have seen much of Austin Calitro. But I ultimately do have Carter Coughlin making it with Cam Brown as inside linebackers 4 and 5. I really wanted to put Austin Calitro on this list. Somebody had to get the bump. And we've seen in the past, guys will ball out in preseason, but still won't make the roster. Now, moving on to the secondary, I have 5 corners making the roster. There's been a lot of injury issues, a lot of transactions that have been taking place. Adoree Jackson and Aaron Robinson, despite what people are saying and how poorly he's played in preseason, are 1 and 2, like it or not. Again, this is a position the Giants might try to upgrade off of waivers. You saw the Giants snuck in a hand and grabbed Harrison Hand, no pun intended, from the Minnesota Vikings. You have third-round rookie Cordale Flott. You have former fourth-round 2020 draft pick in Darnay Holmes, who is a good slot corner. I think those are the 5 corners that I like making this roster. I took Darren Evans into consideration. I took Rodarius Williams into consideration. But quite frankly, I think Rodarius Williams might end up on short-term IR to start the season. He has been a ghost. He's been dealing with injury issues. I'm not a fan of Khalil Dorsey. I would have cut him immediately after the game against the Jets on Sunday. So many blown coverages. It's not even funny. Zion Gilbert, I think he might make the practice squad along with Darren Evans. Rodarius Williams, I think, is headed to IR, which is, I think, I'm giving the slot to Harrison Hand, even though he's only been here for less than a week. He did have 2 tackles in the preseason game and had a good rookie season in 2020 with the Vikings. Fell off a little bit last year. Finally, at the safety position, I have 4. It's Xavier McKinney, Julian Love, Dane Belton, and Trenton Thompson. I could see Trenton Thompson getting cut and winding up on the practice squad, but he's impressed me a little bit more than a guy like a Nate Metters or a Yusuf Corker. Dane Belton, collarbone, looks to be okay. Julian Love and McKinney are penciled in as the 2 starters. Special teams, pretty straightforward. Graham Gano, Jamie Gillen, Casey Kreider. That rounds out the Giants' 53-man roster. So just to recap, I have 4 running backs, 3 tight ends, 6 receivers, 9 linemen on the offense, 5 on the defense, 6 edge rushers, 6 inside linebackers, not including Calitro, 5 corners, and 4 safeties, along with the 3 special teamers and the 3 quarterbacks. And it's going to be interesting. Cut down day is right around the corner. Just a few hours from now, the Giants are going to start making cuts. This is my initial prediction. Let me know what you think in the comments section below. Make sure to subscribe to us on our Twitter and Instagram handles at Big Blue Avenue. Subscribe to our YouTube channel for all the up-to-date and exclusive New York Football Giants content. We love the fans, and we can't do it without you here on the channel. Appreciate all the support. Ring the bell for notifications. Give us a little thumbs up. And again, folks, without further ado, let's go Big Blue.